This story is based on real events in 1561, when two of Japan's greatest warlords clashed on the Kawanakajima Plain, a stretch of land along the Chikuma River in Shinano Province. Their names were Takeda Shingen, the Tiger of Kai, and Uesugi Kenshin, the Dragon of Echigo. Each sought to expand his clan's power, and each believed the other was the greatest obstacle in the path toward national dominance. Shingen, Lord of Kai Province, pressed north into Shinano to control fertile valleys and secure routes into the heart of Japan. His red banners, marked with the four-diamond emblem of Takeda, were feared from castle to castle. Kenshin, ruler of Echigo to the northeast, guarded trade roads that carried salt, rice, and weapons. His white banners, inscribed with Buddhist prayers, symbolized a war fought with both sword and spirit. The plain of Kawanakajima lay between them like a stage set for repeated battles. River bends shaped the terrain. To the west rose Seijoyama, a ridge where camps could overlook the plain. To the east stood Kaizu Castle, Shingen's stronghold, built on solid ground near the Chikuma. Between them stretched Hakamandra, the broad sector of flatland where men and horses could maneuver in dense formations. The summer of 1561 brought the rivals once more to this ground. The season was dry, yet the river ran high from mountain rains, its fords difficult to judge. Morning fog often rolled across the plain, blinding scouts and masking movements. The people of Shinano whispered that the tiger and the dragon would clash again, and the land would shake beneath their armies. At Kaizu Castle, Shingen studied maps lit by lantern flame. His generals pressed for action. Yamamoto Kensuke, the one-eyed strategist, argued for a bold strike to end the stalemate. Shingen's voice was calm. Victory lies not in haste, but in timing. Far above on Seijoyama, Kenshin paced the ridgeline. His officers pointed toward the plain where Takeda banners waved. Kenshin's gaze stayed fixed on the misted river. Shingen waits for me, he said, but I shall not grant him his choice of battle. The stage was set. Both lords gathered tens of thousands of men, samurai on horseback, a Shigeru foot soldiers armed with yari spears and teppo matchlocks, standard-bearers holding tall flags, and signalers ready to sound great conch horns. They prepared not for skirmish but for a decisive test of strength and cunning. The fourth battle of Kawanakajima was about to begin. Before the great collision, the plain of Kawanakajima trembled with smaller fights. Shingen's scouts rode out from Kaizu Castle, probing the edges of the river. They reported Uesugi patrols testing the fords, their horses splashing through the shallows while a Shigeru raised signal conches that echoed against the ridge. Kenshin, watching from Seijoyama, knew his rival relied on long supply lines from Kai Province. He sent detachments to harass the roads, cutting off convoys of rice and salt. Farmers loyal to Echigo guided these columns, their lanterns hidden beneath cloaks when moving through night valleys. Every load of grain lost weakened the Takeda camp. But Shingen had his own allies. Local clans in Shinano provided food and pack horses, loyal out of both fear and opportunity. From the stone walls of Kaizu Castle, flames of watchfires stretched in rows across the plain, a show of strength meant to calm supporters and warn intruders. Weather played its own hand. Late summer rains in the northern mountains swelled the Chikuma River. The current bit cold through armor, its stones slick with algae. Gravel crunched under every step at the ford, forcing soldiers to advance in tight, vulnerable files. Kenshin's men noted these details, marking crossings where morning fog pooled thickest. At night, signal drums in both camps rolled across the valleys. Takeda officers studied water levels by torchlight, lowering bamboo poles into the stream. Uesugi captains wrapped the match cords of their teppo in oilcloth, knowing that dampness could silence a volley at a critical moment. The people of Shinano waited uneasily. Villagers hid food in thatched lofts, uncertain which army would seize their harvest. From Kaizu Castle's towers, banners of the red Takeda horse flew rigid in the night wind. From Seijoyama, the pale flags of Uesugi glimmered like ghostly wings against the ridge. In both camps, commanders whispered of the coming storm. At Kaizu, Yamamoto Kensuke pressed his lord. My lord, the river divides us. If we strike by design, not chance, the dragon will stumble. Shingen gave no reply, but his silence was an answer. Plans already formed behind his calm eyes. On the ridge, Kenshin's closest retainers waited for his judgment. The dragon stood still, listening to the river far below. His words were steady. Shingen prepares a net. We must be the current that slips through. The stage of prelude ended. The battle would be decided not only by courage, but by who read the fog, the water, and the silence of night. Inside Kaizu Castle, Yamamoto Kensuke unrolled a map upon a lacquered table. His one good eye scanned the bends of the Chikuma River, the ridges of Seijoyama, and the wide flat of Hakamambra. He spoke with measured force, his hand tracing movements like strokes of a brush. The dragon sits high on Seijoyama, Kensuke declared. If we strike upward, his teeth will cut us apart. But if we draw him down, his footing falters. Thus we hammer at the ridge with one column, while the main waits below. Like a woodpecker splitting bark, the enemy will be caught between beak and tree. This woodpecker plan relied on precision. Kosaka Masanobu, Takeda's trusted commander, would lead a night march of 8,000 men up the mountain paths. At dawn, they would strike Kenshin's camp from the rear. Meanwhile, Shingen would hold the plain with the larger force, parade across Hakamambra, waiting to crush Uesugi troops as they descended into the open. The strategy promised a trap, hammer from behind, anvil before. But timing was everything. The signal would be given by conch horn at Kaizu, its echo carried across the valley. Masanobu's column, burdened with yari spears and teppo matchlocks, would have to climb steep paths in silence, shields muffling the clatter of armor. Lanterns were forbidden, moonlight alone would guide them. Shingen listened in silence, then spoke with finality. Kensuke, your plan holds merit. Masanobu shall climb. I will wait on Hakamambra. The plain will become the cage. Officers bowed in unison. Outside, soldiers gathered in the courtyards, preparing bundles of rations and wrapping sandals for the march. Horses were led quietly along the stone walls, their tack muffled with cloth. From the watchtowers of Kaizu Castle, smoke from the kitchens drifted upward as the sun fell. Red Takeda banners stirred in the evening wind, casting long shadows over the plain. Kensuke stood apart, his face gaunt, his mind racing. The woodpecker was bold, but if mist and mountains betrayed the column, then the cage could spring shut upon its maker. That night, Masanobu's men began to move. Gravel crunched faintly at the ford as the first ranks crossed the Chikuma in silence. Conch horns were still. Above, Seijoyama loomed dark, its ridgeline sharp against the stars. The hammer was rising into position, step by cautious step. On Seijoyama Ridge, Uesugi Kenshin had no need of maps. The dragon read the land as if it were written in his own hand. From his high campfires, he studied the plain below, watching the flicker of Takeda torches along Kaizu Castle. He sensed a design unfolding. Reports from scouts confirmed movement in the valley. They spoke of columns slipping across the Chikuma ford under cover of night. Kenshin listened, his brow stern. He knew Shingen's mind, draw the dragon down, pin him between hammer and anvil. The woodpecker plan could not succeed if the prey refused to perch. Do not wait to be struck, Kenshin told his captains. We descend first, silent as falling snow. Orders spread through the Uesugi camp. Drums were muffled with leather, their beat reduced to whispers. Match cords for teppo were kept dry under oilcloth, glowing faintly like fireflies as men shielded them with palms. Yari-armed Echigo tightened ranks, adjusting straps in the dark. Horses were led carefully, their hooves wrapped with straw to soften the sound against stone. Columns angled down from the ridge, each following narrow paths cut by goat herders and charcoal burners. The night air smelled of wet pine and river fog. Signal conches were silent, replaced by hand gestures and the dim gleam of lanterns hidden inside jars. From the lower slopes, men could already glimpse the haze above Hakamandra. The plain lay in shadow, Shingen's red banners invisible yet surely waiting. Kenshin's commanders exchanged wary glances. But their lord remained resolute, his white standard with Buddhist prayer stitched in black carried at the head of the vanguard. A captain whispered as they paused on a ledge. "My lord, the tiger waits with jaws wide. Shall we not hold the high ground?" Kenshin's reply was swift, his voice steady. "The tiger hunts with a plan. We strike before his trap closes." Step by step, the dragon's army descended into the fog-shrouded valley. Their march was timed for dawn, when the gray light would break over river and plain. Instead of being hammered from behind, Kenshin aimed to strike the waiting Takeda main body head-on, before Masanobu's night column could return from the ridge. The woodpecker plan was already unraveling. Morning fog lay heavy over Hakamandra. The Chikuma River hissed against its stones, hidden under drifting white. From Kaizu Castle, Takeda Shingen's main force spread across the plain, banners raised but vision clouded. Signal conches groaned through the mist, their echoes confused by distance. Shingen waited, expecting Kenshin's men to pour down later in panic, driven by Masanobu's strike on the ridge. But the fog betrayed him. Instead of panic, the Uesugi vanguard emerged first, steel glinting like sudden flame. Kenshin's leading detachment slammed into the Takeda front before Masanobu's hammer could descend. The clash was violent in its swiftness. A Shigeru with Yari spears braced in walls, their points driving back cavalry. Matchlocks barked through the fog, smoke mingling with mist so that men seemed to fight inside a boiling cloud. Horses reared at the sound, hooves scattering gravel from the riverbank. Takeda's standard-bearers raised the red banners higher, shouting orders lost in the roar. Conches blew again, trying to steady the lines. Officers waved command fans, pivoting wings of a Shigeru toward the shock. Still, the sudden strike pushed deep, forcing Shingen's front into knots of confused men. On the ridge, Masanobu's column had not yet descended. His soldiers were still struggling on steep paths, their silence broken by loose stones rolling into ravines. The hammer lagged, the anvil shook. Kensuke's carefully drawn woodpecker plan strained under the weight of the unexpected. The fog thinned for a moment. Through it, Takeda commanders glimpsed the white banners of Uesugi surging forward. Kenshin himself rode at the head of the charge, his blade raised, his standard close beside him. His men roared a battle cry that rolled across the plain like thunder. At Shingen's command post, aides rushed with reports of collapse. Kensuke, tense and pale, leaned close to his lord. "My lord, the dragon strikes the heart. The ridge column is too slow." Shingen's reply came low and calm. "Then we must endure until the hammer finds its mark." Across Hakamandra, the collision spread wider. Spears locked, volleys cracked, banners snapped wet in the morning wind. The plain, meant to be a cage for Kenshin, had become a storm where both tiger and dragon fought for balance in the fog. Morning deepened, yet fog still clung to Hakamandra. Reports streamed into Takeda's command post, each more troubling than the last. Uesugi spear walls had driven wedges through the front ranks, and volleys of teppo thundered at close range. Officers struggled to keep formations intact as men stumbled on slick river stones. Kosaka Masanobu's night column remained trapped in the ridges of Seijoyama. Narrow paths slowed the climb, loose gravel slid under every step. Signal horns could not pierce the mist, leaving the column blind to Shingen's crisis on the plain. The hammer was lost, the anvil cracked. Amid the chaos, Kenshin pressed forward with relentless speed. His vanguard drove straight toward the red banners of Shingen himself. White flags with Buddhist prayers rippled through the smoke, leading his mounted guard. The dragon aimed not only for victory but for the tiger's very presence. Takeda aides cried out as enemy horsemen broke through. Standard-bearers tightened ranks around Shingen's command post, raising tall flags to steady wavering soldiers. Yet the shock came. Kenshin's personal charge burst into the Takeda line, cutting through a Shigeru and scattering guards. For a heartbeat, the rivals stood within reach. Kenshin, sword in hand, surged at Shingen's command seat. Shingen, seated calmly beneath his standard, raised a war fan of iron to meet the strike. The clash was brief, shielded by his retainers, but it burned into memory, the dragon striking at the tiger's heart, the tiger holding firm behind discipline. Takeda generals rushed to close the gap, rallying cavalry to force Uesugi riders back. Kensuke, frantic at the unraveling of his design, gripped his sword hilt though his body ached with age and wounds. He whispered through clenched teeth. "My plan has failed. Only blood may redeem it." Still, Shingen's voice cut steady through the din. "Hold the banners. Form the wings. The battle is not yet lost." Across the plain, the storm swirled without clear master. Kensuke's woodpecker had struck bark, but the tree did not split. Instead, the tiger and the dragon now wrestled face to face in the fog, each clawing for control of the field. The plain of Hakamambra shook as Takeda banners shifted. Shingen, calm at the center, ordered his reserves to pivot. Conch horns bellowed, their sound rolling over fog and smoke. Standard bearers raised tall flags, signaling wings of a Shigeru to bend inward. The Takeda host began to reform, steadying against the Uesugi surge. To the north, mounted detachments wheeled toward the Chikuma shallows. The riverbank, slick with mist, gave little ground, but volleys of teppo raked across Uesugi files. White banners bent under fire, their left wing pushed against the water's edge. A Shigeru stumbled knee-deep into the river, their yari tangling as they tried to recover footing. Kenshin's central thrust still pressed hard, his mounted guard carving lanes through red ranks. Yet pressure built on his flanks. The Takeda reserves, moving in disciplined blocks, closed from both sides. Crossfire from matchlocks thickened the smoke until men fought half-blind, guided only by banners and the drumbeat of officers. Shingen watched every signal, his iron fan lifted. He refused to yield ground near his command post, anchoring the center while shifting strength outward. The plain became a wheel of clashing spokes, each turn tightening on Uesugi formations. Kensuke, wounded in spirit, spurred forward with a small band, trying to throw himself against the enemy. His shout carried across the din. "If the plan is broken, then let my death be its seal." His charge met Uesugi spearmen, and his figure vanished in the storm. Some say he fell by the river, others that he disappeared into the fog, but his last act marked the desperation of Takeda's gamble. Still, the tiger's host held. Crossfire at the river bent Kenshin's left. Reserve cavalry steadied the right. The dragon's spearhead continued to slash toward Shingen, but the jaws of the Takeda line were slowly closing. Morning turned toward noon. The fog thinned, revealing broken lines, wounded men crawling through mud, and banners torn by powder smoke. Yet neither side yielded. The countermeasures had saved the Takeda from collapse, but the dragon remained unbroken. By midday the fog lifted, revealing the scarred plain of Hakamambra. Heat pressed down, drawing sweat through armor and drying the blood-soaked earth into dark crusts. The Chikuma River glimmered under the sun, its fords turned into battlegrounds where men fought for every stone. Uesugi detachments surged toward the shallows, seeking to cut Takeda lines from the water. Matchlocks cracked in short volleys, the smell of sulfur hanging heavy. Powder was scarce, and captains rationed shots carefully, signaling with fans to hold fire until targets filled the ford. A Shigeru with yari pressed forward when guns fell silent, their spear points glittering as they forced step by step across the current. Takeda defenders fought hard for the crossings. Conch horns roared from Kaizu Castle's direction, guiding reinforcements to threatened sectors. Cavalry splashed through waist-deep water, hooves kicking up spray as they struck the flanks of men in midstream. Gravel crunched under every clash, the sound drowned only by shouts of command and the roar of drums. Evacuation of the wounded slowed both sides. A Shigeru dragged injured comrades to the rear, binding cuts with strips torn from banners. Horses stumbled as handlers tried to pull them from the ford. Supply bearers ran low on water and rice, their packs stripped to refill ranks. Visibility shifted with every gust of wind. Smoke from matchlocks drifted low, then cleared to reveal sudden enemy charges. At times whole companies vanished behind haze, reappearing only when banners rose above the cloud. Kenshin himself rode along the fords, his white standard close behind. He shouted encouragement, his voice cutting through drums and horns. Press the river. Do not yield to the tiger's fire. Across the plain, Shingen countered by shifting wings again, conserving his men while reinforcing weak points. His calm presence steadied the Takeda host, reminding soldiers that the tiger endured even as the dragon roared. The battle swung back and forth, neither side able to seize the ford fully. Midday dragged into long hours of strain, the plain echoing with clashing steel, conch calls, and the relentless surge of the Chikuma against its stones. Afternoon shadows stretched long across Hakamandra. The plain was torn by hours of fighting, its fields trampled into mud, its air thick with smoke and sweat. Both hosts had struck, reeled, and struck again, yet neither tiger nor dragon had broken the other. At the fords of the Chikuma, fighting slowed. Ammunition for Teppo was nearly gone. Captains ordered volleys to cease, conserving the last powder for defense. Yari walls sagged, men leaning on spear shafts while waiting for new commands. The river's cold current bit through boots and greaves, chilling exhausted legs. Kenshin gathered his officers near the center. His white banner still waved, though frayed at the edges. He judged the ground gained and lost, saw the toll on his men, and made his choice. We withdraw to the hills, he said. The tiger holds the plain, but he cannot chase the dragon into stone. Drums signaled retreat. Columns began to pull back, step by step, toward the ridges of Seijoyama. Cavalry covered the movement, lances glinting as they wheeled in disciplined arcs. Standard-bearers faced the enemy even as the line fell away, ensuring the Takeda saw no hint of flight. Shingen, seated calmly at his command post, raised his iron fan. He watched the white banners recede into mist above the ridge. Though his men urged pursuit, he shook his head. No further. The plain is ours. Let the dragon keep the mountains. Takeda horns signaled halt. Soldiers dropped where they stood, some collapsing from exhaustion, others dragging the wounded to makeshift shelters. The red banners of Kai still marked Hakamandra, but they did not advance beyond the river. Both sides claimed ground, yet both had bled heavily. Kensuke was gone, Masanobu's column battered, and Kenshin's strike blunted. Still, neither lord bowed to the other. The plain of Kawanakajima lay scarred, a witness to a struggle that had no victor, only survivors. As twilight fell, villagers crept from hiding, watching fires kindle across both camps. The tiger had endured. The dragon had withdrawn. The storm paused, but its echo remained heavy on the land. Night settled over Kawanakajima. Fires burned in both camps, their smoke rising into a sky washed clear of fog. The plain lay silent but for the groans of the wounded and the distant churn of the Chikuma River. Thousands had fought, thousands had fallen, yet neither lord had seized a clear victory. Takeda Shingen counted his banners. His host still held Hakamandra, but his generals mourned Kensuke, whose daring plan had ended in sacrifice. Kosaka Masanobu returned from the ridge with a battered column, his men limping from the steep paths. Shingen honored them, though his iron fan rested heavy in his hand. Uesugi Kenshin's army camped once more on the ridges of Seijoyama. His followers praised his charge, his courage, and the survival of his host. Yet he, too, walked among weary soldiers, offering calm words as they tended their wounded. His white banner still stood, though torn and stained. Both sides told tales of triumph. Takeda supporters claimed the plain as proof of Shingen's strength. Uesugi followers swore that Kenshin's daring strike showed the dragon's unmatched spirit. In truth, the fourth battle of Kawanakajima was a draw, a clash of equal wills where neither lord could claim the final word. Legends grew from the field. Stories of Kenshin's sword flashing at Shingen's command post spread through provinces, told again and again by travelers and monks. Songs praised Kensuke's bold but doomed woodpecker plan. Villagers remembered the thunder of conches echoing off the ridge, the sight of banners vanishing into fog, and the cold bite of the river that had carried so much blood downstream. Historians would later mark this battle as a lesson in intelligence, timing, and the limits of strategy against anticipation. The tiger and the dragon, bound by rivalry, proved that even great designs could shatter when courage met cunning on shifting ground. The plain of Kawanakajima still lies by the Chikuma River, its soil quiet, its fields tilled by farmers. But in the memory of Japan, the echoes of 1561 remain, where two warlords tested destiny and left behind a story of balance, endurance, and pride. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story of history and legend, please subscribe for more tales from the Age of Samurai.